What is up, you guys? It is Jake State Farm here with Atomic Theory, and we are back with another Atomic Chess video. And in today's video, we are breaking down my pride and joy, the one and only Farmer's Gambit. This is an opening that I've been playing for a few years now. I don't remember when I started playing it. I think it was probably back in 2023 or something like that. And I've actually got a blog post about this on Lichess, breaking down some of the ideas about it, specifically just breaking down what this move B4 does. So if you haven't had the chance yet, please do go and check that out. That kind of explains more of the idea behind this move order of E3, E6. And normally in Atomic, you'd follow up with maybe knight F3, knight C3, something like this. But I've kind of popularized this move B4. Actually, if we flip over to Lichess, if you'll look and see, maybe not. Okay, so it has appeared here at the bottom. When I first started playing it, it wasn't even on this list of moves here. Maybe if we go up to the top here, I think some top players have started to play it just a little bit. But yeah, it is not it's not a very intuitive move, playing B4 on move 2. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense just by looking at it. But once you start to understand the ideas behind it, I would actually say this is one of the trappiest openings. It's been one of my favorite openings recently. In fact, I want to do something. I haven't checked this yet, so this may not be true. But if we just look at this past year of Atomic, it might be the most. Yeah, it is by far, actually. Wow. It is my most played move over the past year in this position, E3, E6. And I want to say E3 is my most common move to start with. So I guess I'm curious to see. It might be my most common. Yeah. So these are I've played these about 300 times each. So that means it is my most common opening. Last year it was the most common opening for me in 2025. And it's honestly just a lot of fun. One of the things that I like about it is that it's not like completely winning for white. White just has a bunch of ideas out of it. So yeah, as you can see here from the computer, obviously the computer says after knight h6 that black is slightly better. But even after some moves that are a little bit weaker, like f6 or d5, black is still in this game. I mean, I want to say even after something like b5, black is still probably okay. Okay, maybe not. About knight c6. Like, black has a ton of options here, and that's one of the things that I kind of like about the opening, is that because it's not very well known, the fact that there's so many lines make it hard for black to prep against it. But without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start off with just some lines that you'll likely see if you do play this opening. There's so many traps in this line. So I want to go over that, and then towards the end of the video, I will expose myself. I'll give a couple lines as black that I think do work really well against it. So yeah, let's start by going over some of the really fun lines that you'll find. So as you can see, the most common move here is knight h6. So let's play that, and I always respond with h3. There might be some other ideas, but yeah, I always go for h3. And as you can see, as I've played against higher rated players, they have started to go for some of these better lines. So d5 would be a move that I consider to be one of the two best lines against this opening. I'll wait and share the other one at the end because, funnily enough, the other line that I think is really, really strong against this opening has never been played before. It's never once been played before against me, and I'm kind of not wanting to show the line just because I don't want people to play it against me, but also I'm kind of curious. I want to see if people will play it. Actually, I take it back. I think I was just looking at it. I think it has been played once in like the 3,000 games that I've gotten from E3, E6, B4. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But okay, so D5 we're going to look at the end of the video. But let's start with the second most common move, knight F5, and you can see 2,500 performance rating there. So 95% win rate, but the average opponent is over 2,000 here. So I mean, it's not like it's not like bums that are playing this. It's good players that are playing this. It's a pretty intuitive move. You're getting your knight here, and you're threatening to go to h4 and d4. And so you have to respond with a move bishop b2. And at this point, black is pretty, I'll turn off the computer here. Black is pretty much already screwed at this point. Yeah, I agree with the computer here. The best move probably is f6, just saying I'm just going to sack this pawn and be slightly worse. You know, maybe, trying to think, bishop d6, maybe it works. You know, queen h5, g6. Like maybe something like this would be okay. At least you have some pressure here, which, you know, could make my development kind of tricky. I wonder what the computer says about this. Yeah, so you know, that could be one way to play this if you see the trap. But as you can see, almost nobody actually sees the trap, and the two most intuitive moves, which are knight d4 and knight h4, are both actually losing. So starting with knight d4, the more common move, you'll play queen h5, and then after pawn to g6, it's this common idea of queen c5. This shows up a lot in a lot of different lines. Specifically, black is able to do this against white in some knight f3, e3 lines. I could go over a bunch of openings where this is an idea, but a very common idea when the knight is here or here to get your queen out to the c5 square and basically force the opponent to take. Like, I guess you could play d6. I'm wondering if d6 is an option here. Obviously, I have 100% win rate here, so I know it can't be great. But in some openings, like d6 is an idea. But more often than not, black basically just has to take. If you play d6, you're just losing a bunch of material there. And I guess in this specific line, I'm thinking after takes, white would just be able to go bishop b5 here. And yeah, something like this. Yeah, so as you can see, I've played this a few times, and not only is white up a rook, but they've also got the rook coming in to checkmate the king soon. So yeah, d6 isn't really possible there. So you will have bishop takes c5, and the difference here, a lot of times this is already good for the player who's able to trade the queen off for the two minor pieces, simply because your black is having to give up two minor pieces, one of which has already made at least two moves. In this case, it actually made 1, 2, 3 moves. So essentially, white is giving up all those black in this case is giving up a lot of tempo there. And so, you know, a lot of times your intuition would tell you that two minor pieces are better than the queen, which is true. But in this case, when black has spent a lot of moves developing the knight, white is just better. And you'll see that in a lot of lines when you're able to trade off the queen for the two minors in the center of the board like that. Well, specifically in this opening, it's very good for white because you've got this move bishop f6, and it's a pretty move, and there's no way to stop you from losing the queen here. And so best move for black is just to take back here. And yeah, now white is up a clean knight, and black has absolutely no ideas. All the pawns are still on the board, so there's no open fouls or anything. These pieces aren't any closer to getting out. In fact, they're actually a little bit hampered by the pawn structure over here. This pawn is placed nicely to stop the knight, and these pawns kind of blocking the bishop this way. So, and on top of all that, it's white's move. So white will go knight f3, and then you have to play f6, and then, you know, white will actually be the one developing here. So you're only up a piece, but very, very comfortable position to play. Queens are off the board and everything like that. So that's after knight d4, just remembering queen h5 and trading it off for the two minors. And that's a line that you see in some other openings. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there is sometimes this idea of getting your bishop here if the e and g pawns have been pushed, and then the queen is hopeless. It just has to trade itself off. So the other idea is knight h4. Same thing, we're going to start with queen h5 and g6, and then once again, we're going to play this move bishop f6, and as you can see, 28 performance rating. Call me never of 0 here, because yeah, I don't lose in this line. But yeah, this line is completely winning for white. Once again, we'll see the same thing where we're trading off our bishop. But here, we actually get to keep our queen on the board. So we'll start with the move bishop to b5. And, of course, black can't take, because then black would be getting mated after... okay, I guess this would work. Queen h6. How would you want to start? I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, this would work fine. f6 and then queen h6, and there's no way to stop the white queen from getting in there. So you can't take on b5, and after pawn to c6, then we have this move queen to e5, which is threatening to come into g7, c7, d6, and f6. And funnily enough, there is actually a way to stop all the threats, at least temporarily. It's only been played 2 times, but the move bishop e7, it obviously cuts off these two. And if you are to go queen to g7, there's actually king d8. And it's not so simple. If you go back to e5, then black can just play king e8 there. If you go into c7, then black can play king f8. So there's not immediate checkmate here, but if you look and see, it is still completely winning for white. So yeah, you've got a queen in the center of the board here. Black's not going to be able to castle. I guess I've played queen c7. I think there is actually, I thought there was forced mate here, but I guess not. But yeah, either way, this is completely winning for white either way. So if they don't go bishop b7, then you will have forced mate. I think any other move here, yeah, any other move is just forced mate for white. So that's that line. That's the line after knight f5. The key move to remember here is just bishop to b2. And then no matter where the knight goes, d4 or h4, then we will be bringing our queen out to h5. And we're eventually going to get this idea of bishop f6, and the queens will be traded off there. So I guess the other move to consider is knight c6. Looks like that gets played quite a bit. And yeah, there's a couple ideas here. Recently, I've been going for this idea of d4 a bit more. You do want to be careful if you go bishop b2 and they go knight d4. You don't want to play this move e takes d4. This is just going to be checkmate after queen h4, g3, and queen e4. So that's one little trap that black has. But yeah, this is completely fine. If you look at the computer, it'll say that white is fine here. I think it does prefer the move pawn to d4. Okay, I stand corrected. The reason I like d4 is because it does kind of box in this knight a little bit. The knight doesn't really have any squares to go to anymore. And so, yeah, this is a common theme in this opening. Even though the computer doesn't love it, I'll still score pretty well with it just because the black side is often just not too familiar with these lines anyway. And so they'll, they won't know what they're doing, and they'll make a mistake at some point. But objectively speaking, I think this is actually not a bad position for white at all. Yeah, d5 is definitely the best move to play here. I'm just cutting off my idea of potentially playing d5. But you're perfectly fine here as white. There's no reason to be concerned. I think there is some tactical lines with bishop b2. Ah, yes, I remember this now. If they go knight d4, there is actually a threat here. You'll go queen h5, and same thing, g6 and queen c5. And it'll kind of transpose into the other line. If they take the queen here, then you'll have bishop f6. So that is one trap that you can set. But the alternative is they don't have to go knight d4. They could just play f6 instead. But yeah, I guess maybe bishop b2 is a better move. Maybe I should start playing that instead. What else here? Okay, so g6 will kind of transpose into some other lines. Yeah, I start with bishop b2, just threatening to come on this diagonal here, so they'll go f6, and then I'll play bishop d3 here. And now there's really no way to save material. The most common move here, which is not the best move, is to go knight g4, because, right, essentially we're threatening to take here, and if you go knight f5, then we can take here. So a lot of players will say, I don't want to lose any material, I'll go knight g4. But this actually just opens up our position quite a bit. After h5, I'll probably go something like knight f3, and this will transpose into a similar trap that we'll see in another line. But I think even the computer really prefers this for white already. Yeah, so it's not a bad position for black here, but you are going to go down material as black. So a lot of players will panic and just go knight g4. And knight f5 is a perfectly fine move, just giving up this pawn, because you do get this open file for black here. Okay, and then yeah, f6 kind of transposes. I like to start with bishop b2 if they go f6, because if you go bishop d3 first, now knight f5 actually works, and there's no bishop takes here. So if I see that, I always start with bishop b2, kind of cutting off their idea of knight f5, and then if they go like g6 or c6 or whatever, then I'll go bishop d3, and it'll kind of transpose into that same line. Even d5, I think bishop d3 probably works here. Yeah, it looks like you're getting material one way or the other here. Okay, that's knight h6. All right, let's look at knight f6 here. Second most common move, and 95% win rate. Yeah, this one is brutal. A lot of people play this line, and it seems okay. Like you're threatening to come in here and here. This kind of transposes into a line like this, which most players would know is winning for white with best play. It's similar to this line. Of course, there's a key difference, which is that you've already played b4 and they've already played e6. So what are the pros and cons? Well, playing b4 stops any kind of bishop b4 ideas coming with a tempo here. So that's pretty useful. But instead, because they've played e6, they can now immediately go bishop d6. And the other line, when it's just, e3, knight f6, queen f3, a lot of times if they go e6, then you have time to go knight h3, bishop d3, something like that. Well, in this case, we obviously don't have time for knight h3. We don't even have time for bishop d3, because then they'll just go bishop g3 there and be able to capture on f2. So instead, we have to play this move bishop b5, but this also just works, and people don't know this line yet. I guess they're just not familiar with it. But now, if you play bishop takes b4, well, now we've pretty much transposed. Now I'll go knight h3, g5, bishop b2, and you're not holding on to this. I'm threatening to come here, and I don't know if it's forced mate. Oh wow, black actually has a resource of rook g8 here. It's never been played in 44 games, so I guess black does have one move to kind of stay alive here. I wasn't actually familiar with that because I've never seen it. But I guess even then it says white is better. But so you wouldn't really want to play this line as black. So instead of taking, a lot of players will just play c6 instead. And then after bishop takes c6, there's two moves to really be afraid of here. And wow, I can't believe knight c6 is that common. I didn't realize that. After knight c6 and knight h3, it's pretty much just losing for black here. Let's say pawn to g5, and we'll see this same idea here. And there's just so much pressure here. Okay, once again, there's this idea of rook g8. That's kind of funny. Again, never been played. Not a very intuitive idea. But the point is, after taking, then you can come down here to g2 there. So there's one resource to stay alive there, I guess. But realistically, that's nobody actually ever plays that. And that line is pretty much winning for white. So instead, you really have two moves, queen c7 and queen b6, and the idea is the same, right? If we go queen c7 and we try to play this move knight h3, which is what we want, then black is able to come in with queen g3, and if king d1, then they can just take and explode all of our pieces. And if queen b6 and we go for this same thing of knight h3, then again, they have queen d6 now, threatening here, and so when we push our pawn, then it'll transpose after queen g3, and again, if we move, they'll just take all of our pieces. So, queen b6 and queen c7, they both stop this idea of knight h3. So instead, no matter what, if they go c7 or b6, the point is just to go queen c6 here. And now it doesn't really matter what they do. It'll all pretty much transpose. But basically, if they castle, I like to play this move pawn to f3, just a quiet move, just keeping these queens here. And now I'm the one threatening to take here. So a lot of times they will just take my queen. I guess queen b5 is not a bad idea either. But yeah, no matter what they do, like let's say they go queen takes c6, then you're actually able to go knight h3 and go up even more material here, because now you're threatening to come into g5, and so they'll have to go knight e4 to stop that. And yeah, you're only up a piece here, but very pleasant position for white. And really already at this point, you can see that the computer likes this for white. Oh yeah, there is this interesting idea of queen d4. That would be nice. But yeah, so whether they castle, whether they take, if they take, again, you'll just go f3. And a lot of times they'll eventually castle and you'll get knight h3. It'll kind of transpose. Basically, you just go up a pawn, but it is a pleasant position. You've already played b4, meaning your bishop's got this nice square on b2 to go to. You'll be setting up knight h3 ideas with the pawn already pushed to f3 is pretty useful. It's actually kind of puts this knight in a weird spot where it's never going to really be able to go to knight g4 because we'll always have knight g5 attacking this pawn. And so this setup where you have this pawn on f3 and this knight threatening to come to h3 really puts this knight on f6 in a bad spot. Yeah, so for instance, knight c6, I would just go knight h3, and now this knight kind of has to make a decision on what it wants to do. It basically has to give itself up for some material here. So that's that line. Yeah, important thing to remember is, yeah, after knight f6, just going queen f3, and then if bishop d6, then we'll hit them with this move, bishop b5. There are some other moves played, like c6, knight c6, d5, but in general, I could go into those lines. They're all winning for white, though. You'll always play knight h3 pretty much, and that's your threat in the position, right? Knight h3 is your big threat, and so bishop d6 is kind of the one way to stop that. Feel free to look at those other lines for yourself. There are some tries for black there, but generally, if you just play normal moves, you'll be fine as white in those lines. Okay, here's one of my favorite traps here. This probably is actually my favorite trap in the whole opening. It's this move, knight to c6, and I respond with the move knight to f3, and after pawn to f6, which is the most common move, I like this move, bishop to d3. And it seems strange. You can already see the second most common move here, knight d4, right? I obviously can't take this. Black's threatening to come in here. This looks actually pretty scary for white on first sight here. But even more common than this is to start with g6, and then I give them another chance to play this move. I play the move bishop b2, and now it looks even more tempting, because not only can I not take this knight, but now it's also cutting off my bishop here. But as you can see here, the main idea in both of these lines is to go knight to e5, which is just a beautiful move. You're moving the knight here on a square that it can't be taken, and you're threatening checkmate here. And so black has to push this pawn, and then you get another tempo. You play knight to f7, getting yet another tempo. And no matter where they go, queen d6 or queen d7, it looks like d6 is a lot more common. You'll hit him with this move, bishop to b5. And yeah, black has a lot of options here, but they're all losing. So c6 is the most common idea. But now you can just simply take this knight. This queen has nowhere to go. Actually, queen to b8 is one line that I still have problems with. It hasn't been played hardly at all, but I think this is an underrated line. The computer will say it's pretty nice for white. I think this is the one line in this position that gives me a little bit of trouble. But other than that, this queen is just coming off the board. So if you take this pawn, then I'm taking your queen. Anywhere you move your queen, here I can take it, here I can take it. So the queen d8 is the only square that you have. And that's really the case for any of these lines, right? If you had played queen c6, then I could play knight d6, king e7, and take here. I think this is winning. I don't even know if this is the best line. Yeah, okay, yeah, this is the right line. So yeah, feel free to look at these lines, but it's pretty much all the same thing. Once you get into this position, the key move here is just to remember knight to e5, killer move, and people just don't expect it. I mean, as you can see, 54% of people in this position are blundering. I mean, knight d4 is like one of the worst moves in the position you can play here, but people just don't expect it, right? They aren't familiar with this line whatsoever. It is a big blunder. I'm worried to release this video and get a lot less wins, but people just fall for this over and over and over again. So knight e5 is actually a really strong move. It's a move that people have started playing against me. And after something like bishop takes e5 and d5, I mean, this is uncomfortable for white. I can't lie. I really prefer black here. White's got these pieces out, but black's got these pawns cutting them off. And actually in these types of positions, I really prefer the side that's got the pawns advanced, because these pieces will actually end up being kind of a liability. They're kind of blocking my pawns from expanding. It's a principle that's kind of true in standard chess as well, which is that you want to develop your pieces behind pawns. But I think especially in atomic, because pawns are so powerful, and you can't. Yeah, they take up space way more efficiently than they do in standard chess. So this is definitely a line that I'm a little scared of going against. But to me, it's worth the payoff of getting free wins over and over again. If I'm going against someone that I know for sure knows this line, I would consider maybe doing something like pawn to d4. Looks like I've also gone bishop to b2, which gets into a pretty balanced position. So bishop d3 is more of like a trap line. You don't have to play it, but certainly if you're playing against somebody for the first time in this line, absolutely recommend bishop d3. As you can see, 89% win percentage here. Just a very, very nice trappy line to go for there. Another idea here is queen f6, and we'll talk more about this line later on, but the main idea would be bishop d3, and yeah, the one line to be kind of mindful of, I mean, knight d4 just simply doesn't work after bishop g6 and takes. This is actually a pretty line. After knight takes c2, you can see material is equal, so you could think this is an equal position, but black is actually helpless here. For instance, say after the move knight to e5, black now has to push this pawn, so we'll go d6, and then it's this pretty idea of rook c1. And the only move to survive for black here is king e8. But if you play c6, then I'll just take, and my rook is open. And if you go c5, then I'll take, and my rook is still open. This is one of those lines that's just like, if you've never seen it before, there's no way you can expect it coming. Like, you could be like, oh, I'm fine after knight takes c2. But the pieces just work. Like this knight e5 and rook c1 idea, like you don't really see this in any other lines hardly. It's just in this line, it just works. Like this knight attacks this and also attacks this square, which is completely, needed for this. So it's completely winning here. Yeah, king e8 is the best try, and then after knight d7, I'm just going to roll this f pawn down the board. And yeah, with best play, white can easily win this position, even with equal material. You've just got a really nice knight here, and this open f file to work with here. So that's one fun line here that I really like, that happens quite a bit. Yeah, knight d4 is super common. The other line is knight h6, and I'll be honest, this line does give me some trouble. It is winning for white with best play, but it does give me some trouble. Important move to remember here is bishop g6. If you start with bishop takes h7, yeah, black does have some weird lines here. I think it's like after knight d4, if you take, oh, okay, yeah, it's just queen f4, and no good way to stop this. So yeah, important move to remember here is bishop g6, and then you should be good after that, even though you can see I don't score well with this. It hasn't been played in a while. I guess back in the day I just wasn't as strong, but I'm a bit more comfortable in it now, I think. But yeah, after king d8, you just need to go g4, and then the main move that you'll see is bishop d6, and then you can just simply take, and if rook f8, then d4 is important. Just knowing this line, it looks a little scary, but as you can see, I've been able to win it both times. After bishop g3, playing king d2, and something like this. Like I said, it looks a little scary, but you're totally fine here. This queen guards this. You've got ideas of pawn to f4 to block off the rook, and even like bishop b2 and king c1. Yeah, so you'll be completely fine here as white. Remembering this idea of d4 and king d2. And then if they start with bishop g3, yeah, it's h takes, and then rook f8, and then now you can just play f4 after knight e5. Yeah, as you can see, I did lose this quite a bit back in the day, but according to the computer, it's nice. So maybe something that you want to consider, but this is a rare line, and even if you do get into it, you should be able to win if you're able to convert better than me. Okay, that took quite a bit. So we've gone over the 3 knight moves, which happen to be the 3 most common moves. Let's roll through these next few pretty quickly here. Okay, so d5 is another move that you'll see. A few ideas here. I like to just go queen h5 and just kind of trade off the queens here. If they go queen f6, you can go up a pawn here if you want. And if they go queen h4, g3, and queen f4, there's this trappy line of knight f3. And obviously if takes, then you've got knight g5 with the double attack here. And so instead, a lot of times, I guess that's the most common move. So that's nice, but a lot of times they'll go f6 instead. And then it's this tricky move of queen b2. This isn't actually good for white, I don't think. But it's a line to look at. I mean, I score well with it just because other people don't know what they're doing in this line. My queen is actually safe on this square, at least for the time being. And their queen is out in the open, attacked by multiple pieces, and there's going to be no way for them to save their queen. queen g4, I could just go h3. So, it's a strange line. Your queen isn't great on b2, but you're just kind of putting it here until you're able to get their queen off the board. So it's one line to consider. If you don't want to go into that, you could also just play f3, which is totally fine, and then trade off queens. And after queen d4, I think maybe, I always just take. I thought maybe bishop d3 was an idea, but I always just take and get a free pawn here. And the computer likes this for white as well. But the big thing here, right, is like even if they go queen f4, f3, and takes, this pawn is actually a strength. You could even play b5 right now, and it does kind of restrict the queen side, right? Like if bishop d7, it's blocked. Knight c6 or knight a6, you could just take. And then even like b6, you're stopping the bishop from getting out this way. So this pawn is more of a strength rather than a weakness. Even if you wanted to keep it here just to block this bishop, you could go something like probably knight h3 here would be totally fine. So the computer will say it's about equal, but I tend to like this position for white okay, even if you just go into like a normal, you could do it here too, queen f6, you could just take here and it's probably okay. Oof, the computer doesn't like that. But yeah, I generally think that this pawn tends to be a strength rather than a weakness down the line. So that's pawn d5. Like I said, there's some other lines you could go into. Knight f3 is one idea, but generally I just prefer just trading off the queens in that line. Okay, we got a couple more trappy lines here. So let's start with pawn to f6. Okay, so pawn f6, I play this move bishop to d3. And now black's got a couple ideas. After the move g6, there's this really strange idea that you don't really see in any other openings. But it's this idea of queen g4. And I think the computer says it's okay for black. Yeah, the computer actually likes it for black. But I score really well with this line, and it's such a fun line. I guess if you don't want to go g4, okay, even the computer recommends it actually. So yeah, let's definitely go queen g4 then. I guess if you don't want to go into this, you know after f6 you could go d4 or something like that, which the computer would probably be a bigger fan of. But yeah, g6 and queen g4. And so the most common move here is pawn to f5. And after the queens get traded off the board here, you will just have knight to f3 here. And there's no knight f6. We just have bishop takes here. Even like knight h6, there's no threat of knight g4 because of bishop takes. And common idea in atomic here, because this f pawn's already been pushed to f5, now it's going to be really hard for black to stop our knight from coming in here. There's no way to stop both e5 and g5. I actually like this move of bishop g7. Seems pretty good. Knight g5. Yeah, I actually kind of like this idea. I wonder what the computer says about it. Yeah, so that's one idea. But yeah, a lot of times you'll see like d6 just stopping this, and then your knight's gonna infiltrate here. H6, probably knight h7 here. I guess I go knight f7, and yeah, now I'm threatening here. And if you go knight f6, as I said, you can just take here. And so basically, no matter what, you're gonna get an infiltrated knight in this position here. So that's a nice line for white. And then another idea is h5, and then I like to go queen g3. And then if they go with the most common move of bishop d6, then you've got bishop b5, and after c6 and takes, you're up a pawn. It's an okay position for white. I think the computer probably likes it for black, actually. Holy moly. Maybe this should be one of my recommendations for black. But again, you're not really trying to please the computer with this opening. You're just going for so many different ideas and traps. And as you can see, it does end up scoring well in the long run. But yeah, h5 is another solid move. But let's say they do something normal, like say, okay, there's this move bishop d6 that gets played a lot. Your big idea is to go bishop takes g6, and okay, so I guess in this line you have bishop g3 and then king d1. But yeah, if you go, if you go knight e7 to block here, then queen h5, knight g6. And, oh wait, hold it. That's a different line I'm thinking of. Yeah, you would just have queen g7 here. Never mind. I'm sorry. Okay, let's look at a line where they go something like knight c6. Yeah, let's do that. So then bishop takes g6. Again, you're threatening to go to h5 here, but you obviously can't play h5 because there's queen g6. So you'll go knight e7 instead, and then after queen h5 and knight g6, then there's bishop b2, and you're threatening to take on f6 here. And I think this is okay for black, but as white, I like this position. I win these types of positions quite a bit. Again, it's not always after knight c6, but like after c6 or d5. Same idea. You're just sacking the bishop on g6, and then you're going to play queen h5. And black pretty much has to find this idea of knight e7, knight g6. And even then, you'll have bishop b2 threatening this f6 pawn, and it puts black in a really tough position. Again, I think the computer thinks it's okay, but I tend to like this position for white. So that's kind of the main idea after f6 is we're going to go, it's this weird idea, but we're going to go bishop to d3, g6, and queen g4. Super fun line there. Okay, what else do we want to look at here? We've looked at a lot of the main openings here. Pawn to f5, I just go knight f3. This transposes into common theory here, so I won't go over that one. Let's see here. Okay, so this is the last one I'll go over. A move like b5 here, and then I'll quickly go over the recommendations for black. Yeah, so a move like pawn b5. This sets up a really common trap in this line. So it's not going to work every time. But it will work sometimes, and I've gotten some good players with this trap. It's a super fun one. So we'll go knight f3, f6, and do this similar setup that we've seen a bunch. You know, bishop d3 just kind of threatening here. Black's got to play g6, and then we'll play this kind of slow move of bishop b2 here. And as you can see, the top move here is d5. 36% of the time, people will play d5 in this position. And, you know, as you can see, it's not just with b5. This could have started with d5. You could have started with c6, g6, h5. There's a lot of lines that lead to a position similar to this, where basically you've got your knight and two bishops here, and they've got their pawns kind of set up like this. Well, believe it or not, this is almost force mate already. After knight e5, black cannot take this knight. After f takes, you've got this idea of queen f3. And if they go knight to f6, then you can play bishop takes g6, queen f6, bishop takes f6. And you'll notice black is not able to move this bishop with a tempo. That's the big idea in this line, right? If we hadn't pushed our pawn to b4, black could play bishop b4 himself, threatening this pawn on d2. And actually in this position, it would, you know, it probably wouldn't end up working anyway. But yeah, that's the big idea of pawn to b4, is to just cut off this bishop from being able to get a tempo on our king. And that's what kind of brings this position to life. And there's so many lines where you can do this. You know, let's say they start with c6 instead, which happens quite a bit. You know, 110 games here. Same thing, knight f3, f6, bishop d3, g6. And then we just play this quiet move, bishop b2. We kind of force out these two pawn moves and then just play bishop b2. And once again, d5 is just a really common move. Even h5 doesn't get played much, but same kind of thing. You'll just go knight e5, and then if takes, it's completely losing after queen f3. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gotten this trap off, because it happens in a lot of different positions. So like the database won't tell me every position that it's happened, because like it could even happen starting with d5. Again, I don't normally go into this, but say knight f3, bishop d3. You know, you could go bishop b2, and, you know, d4 will stop the idea here. But yeah, if they go h5, same thing. We're just going to go knight e5, and if they take, then it's over. If they don't take, then you're going to get knight f7 in, and you'll be completely winning no matter what the position is. This knight on f7 is going to be really strong. So that's kind of one of the main traps that you see. It doesn't show up towards the top because it just happens from a bunch of different positions. So it's tough to know really how many times I've gotten people in it, but that's one of the most common traps that you will see in this opening. Okay, let's quickly go over the two lines that I recommend for black really quickly here, because we are going pretty long here. So let me quickly go over these lines. If someone plays this against you, I want you to know what to do as black here. So the first line is, as I talked about, knight h3, or knight h6, h3, and then this move pawn to d5. And the computer likes this for black. I like it for black because it kind of cuts off any ideas of bishop b2 in the future. You're just going to be able to hit him with d4, and that's going to be really nasty for white. So like in this case, you kind of are now threatening knight f5, right? Because you've blocked off any of like these queen h5, queen c5 ideas. You've blocked off any bishop b2, bishop f6 ideas. So this really is kind of stopping a lot of white's fun here. If you go bishop d3, for instance, you don't want to go f5. It would just be queen h5, queen g5. But I believe knight f5 is fine. And then, yeah, no bishop b2. You would just go pawn to d4. And this is really, really good for black. So this move d5 in this particular position just really cuts off a lot of white's fun. Never of Zero was playing this line f4. And I think there's some merit to this line with the idea of potentially getting your knight out to f3 in the future. So this might be a potential trappy line in the future. I haven't looked into it enough to really know. The computer's okay with it with either side. But I normally just go for this line of queen h5 and the same idea that we saw before against d5. And again, queen f6, you can just take here. And, as we looked at queen h4, g3, if they go queen f4, you could go knight f3. And again, there's no takes because of knight g5. So then after f6, you would just go back to b2 like this. And we already looked at these lines. The big difference is just that they've got their knight here and we've got our pawn here, which I would say tends to be pretty good for black in these positions. So, yeah, so you can look into that line, but that's one line that I recommend as black, starting with knight h6 and then just going d5. It really does take away a lot of the fun traps that white has. This is really the only line that black can play where I'm like, oh, I don't have any good traps to try and use. The other line that I want to look at is in this line of knight to c6, and after knight to f3, queen f6, and as we looked at after bishop d3, we know knight d4 is completely losing after bishop g6 and bishop takes f7. We also know that knight h6 is completely losing after bishop g6, king d8, and g4. But one line that we didn't look at is the move that the computer recommends, and I misspoke earlier. It's actually been played 3 times. It's this really, really weird but cool-looking move of queen to f4. And after white takes here, there's this move knight to d4 threatening c3. And so we now need to get our queen out, let's say queen h5. And so you could get into a line something like this with f6. And yeah, you do have a queen for the knight and the pawn. But I mean, as black here, I actually really like black's position. Right, you can't take here. Black's just going to be able to take on c2. That's black's main threat here. And so, what do you even do as white here? It says it's equal. I guess you would go bishop b5 first and then takes. But yeah, this just seems good for black. You've got the option to take here if you want, or you can just keep this strong knight. I mean, it's not like white's really even threatening to push, because then you've got knight c2 and potentially taking in the corner here. So, I mean, this knight on d4 ends up being just really strong. And it all starts with this queen sack on f4. I guess I'm not forced to take on f4. Again, nobody really ever plays this line, so I haven't looked into it before until like a few minutes before filming this video. But if I'm white, I would honestly be genuinely scared of seeing this line. I hope, genuinely hope that me making this video doesn't cause people to play this against me more, because yeah, I love this line, the Farmer's Gambit, as I've called it. I've been playing it for a long time now, and it is my best scoring opening for sure, and it is just my favorite opening to play. It's so much fun. I probably didn't fully cover every single trap that there is, but I hope I gave you a glimpse into some of the traps that there are, and I hope you can see that black's got so many different options here. But there are traps for every line, and I'll be honest, some of them the computer doesn't love, and I just had to find the traps and find what worked against different moves. And so I urge you, that was probably one of the turning points in Atomic for me when I really started to enjoy it a whole lot more, was when I came up with my own opening. And so I encourage you guys, if you're watching this video today, to do the same and to create your own opening. Don't be afraid to go off of what's mainstream. Stop playing 2 knights or knight f3, e3 spam. Try something new. try an opening that the computer doesn't love, and make your own threats, because I can tell you firsthand that this opening has actually made me a much better player, and it's actually probably one of my highest performance rating openings too. It's definitely outperforming knight f3 here, and so it's not only just a fun opening, but it's also a really good opening. And I think it paints a bigger picture of atomic chess, which is, the opening is such an important part of the game. The opening decides so much in atomic chess. And I think even more so than in standard chess, it's important to have as many openings. I would say right now I have at least 5, but probably more. As many openings that you feel really, really comfortable playing, that you know really well. Because even though, I might play against Maxwell or somebody that I play against a lot, and they may know absolutely how to stop this move pawn to b4, and so maybe I won't play it against them. But if I'm queuing up against somebody new, it's important to know a bunch of openings that you know really well, because if they beat you in one, then you can just go to the next one. And so I feel confident queuing up against anyone that I haven't played against hardly at all, because I just have so many options, and this is one of my favorite options, this move pawn to b4. Just to throw them off, really test their opening theory, really see if they know if they know my opening as well as I do. But anyway, that's going to do it for today's video. It is running pretty long, so I'm going to end it there. I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.